Beauty consultant Clare Bernal glanced up at the clock and smiled. Her long workday was nearly over. Suddenly, her colleague's expression changed abruptly to one of horror as a man crept up behind Clare, pressed a gun to the back of her head, and... Imagine working at one of the world's largest luxury department stores. As you pass through the glass doors, you enter an oasis of perfume and cosmetics, footwear, clothing, handbags, home decor, and everything else that could be sold in such a center. For one young woman, this was her dream job. Here, she was completely in her element until one summer evening when her life was cut short in an instant. This story makes you wonder what you would do if you were in Clare Bernal's shoes. This tragedy took place in Great Britain. A young woman named Clare Marie Bernal was born on July 25, 1983, in Groombridge, a village straight out of a fairy tale with sleepy green pastures and a blue ribbon of a river. Groombridge has a population of only about 1,600 people. It is just a 2-hour train ride from London, so you can make a round trip in a single day. Clare's mother, Patricia Adams, whom everyone called Trisha, worked as a chef, and the girl's father, Martin, was a finance manager who conducted business in London. Clare was the oldest of 3 children, so she was responsible for her younger brothers. When the girl turned 7, her parents' relationship cracked, and they divorced. If the divorce of her father and mother played any role in Clare's life, she never showed it, always remaining positive and radiating optimism. Due to her age, the girl did not try to choose between her mom and dad and continued to maintain close relationships with both of them. The children stayed with their mother, and some of the responsibilities for raising the younger brothers fell on the shoulders of the eldest and only daughter. Clare was a quiet, calm child. In childhood, it took her a long time to open up. With each passing year, from an inconspicuous, shy girl, she turned into a pretty young woman, kind, trusting, and frank. Every morning, Clare watched her mother put on makeup, and by the age of 12, she was already experimenting with various types of cosmetics herself. Clare attended a Catholic secondary school and worked part-time at a local store to be able to finance her love for cosmetics. She enjoyed doing makeup for her mom and her girlfriends when they came over for sleepovers. That's when she began to come out of her shell because the opportunity to make others beautiful increased her own confidence. Clare was beautiful in soul. She saw only the good in people, not wanting to see their bad qualities. Her beautiful soul was clothed in outward attractiveness, which Clare herself often did not notice. When Clare turned 18, she had transformed into a stunning young woman with long, golden brown hair, flawless skin, and a beautiful smile. By that time, she was a self-taught makeup artist, but the lack of knowledge still affected her professionalism. Clare decided that to move forward in her career, she needed to increase her level of knowledge. That is why the girl went to East Kent College, where she studied cosmetology for 2 years. In the future, Bernal dreamed of working on movie sets or in the theater, doing stage makeup. She practiced this every day in the studio. After receiving a diploma as a beauty consultant and theatrical makeup artist, in 2003, Clare began sending out emails with her resume to various department stores that had cosmetic departments, hoping to gain more practice. She crossed her fingers and sent applications to the most famous brands, not really hoping to be noticed. And then, at one of the top 3 shopping centers in London called Harvey Nichols, they noticed her resume and invited her for an interview. Clare carefully checked her portfolio and meticulously flipped through her college notebooks to refresh her knowledge. The girl was very nervous because this was her dream job. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. Harvey Nichols, a British chain of department stores, sold designer collections of clothing for men and women, fashionable accessories, cosmetic products, fine wines, and luxury food items. Of course, Clare did everything to get a position at this store, and she got it. Friends and family never doubted the girl for a second, unlike herself. In the fall, Clare moved to London and started working at one of the most famous department stores. On the first floor, there were dozens of showcases with skincare products, perfumes, and cosmetics. Along the walls stood displays dedicated to specific brands. Claire and 3 other employees were responsible for one of these displays, where premium cosmetics were sold. Wealthy female customers would come to them and sit in chairs. The employee's task was to select suitable shades and recommend skincare products, as well as skillfully apply makeup so that the clients would like it and want to purchase cosmetic products of that brand. Claire was very proud of her work and always looked the part, making sure her face was flawlessly made up, her posture was straight, and her hair was carefully styled, as the department's employees were walking advertisements for the products they offered. The girl's voice was melodic, and her speech was well-spoken. She was simply made for this job. The department's employees worked in 2 shifts and spent their evenings attending parties and exploring London. Claire became very close with her colleagues. The girls were about the same age, and their interests coincided in many ways. Claire, Susan, and Natalia rented an apartment together in a safe area, about a 40-minute train ride from the shopping center. It was a green zone, similar to the countryside. Claire felt at home. She was still very close to her mother, Tricia, who now lived in Tunbridge Wells with her new partner, Peter. She also periodically communicated with her father because now both her brothers lived with him. However, Claire did not manage to see her family and friends often. Now her whole life was mainly focused on London and the shopping center where she worked. The girl liked the freedom that her profession as a beauty consultant provided her. She enjoyed hanging out with her new girlfriends, going on dates, and feeling her own attractiveness. As for long-term prospects in relationships with men, Claire was very picky. She was in no hurry to start serious romances. That was exactly the case until a handsome guy named Michael Petch appeared on the horizon. Michael got a job as a security guard at the department store in 2004, and Claire immediately took notice of him. The man had sparkling blue eyes and a kind of cute smirk. Apparently, the interested glances that the girl cast at the new security guard did not go unnoticed. At the end of January 2005, Michael approached and struck up a conversation with Claire in her beauty salon. He asked her out on a date, and she was so flattered that she immediately called her mom and excitedly told her about the handsome man. Michael Petch, or Michal, a shy but very attentive man, was originally from Slovakia. He had served in the army for some time and, after working at the American Embassy in Bratislava, came to London in 2003 on a student visa. While Michael was in the UK, Slovakia joined the European Union. This meant that he could now freely stay and work in this country. When Claire called her mother again, she said that she and Michael had already been on a date, drank coffee, had deep conversations about everything, and walked in the park. The girl shared that her new acquaintance had traveled a lot and was fun to talk to. The only thing she wasn't sure about was whether she wanted a serious relationship. This was also facilitated by the fact that Michael was 9 years older than Claire and had recently gone through a divorce. At some point, Claire felt that the man had become much more infatuated with her than she had anticipated, and since then she had felt out of place. For her, he was nothing more than a nice friend, a companion with whom it was pleasant to spend time. She simply enjoyed walking together and was not inclined towards a long-term relationship. The girl always respected her mother's opinion, so when she showed Tricia a photo of Michael, she doubted whether this person was suitable for her daughter. The woman thought that he looked too mature for her, and there was something inexplicable in his eyes, as if he had been through a lot in his life. She did not categorically express her opinion, as she saw that Claire did not have serious feelings for him. And indeed, this little fling did not last long. Just 3 weeks after their first date, on February 28th, Claire broke off the relationship. Claire believed that before getting married or starting a serious romance, she needed to interact with different men and understand for herself what attracted her to people of the opposite sex, what she was really looking for in the long run. This is a fairly conscious approach of an adult, not to rush headlong into the pool, but to find out what you really want. In April 2005, Claire, Susan, and Natalia moved to another apartment. It was a multi-story brick building, and life there was picking up steam. In July, Claire turned 22. Her mother arranged a 5-day trip to Florence, Italy for her, where they attended music festivals and took many photos. The pictures of the mother and daughter dancing, laughing, and just having a wonderful time together were supposed to be happy memories for years to come. Claire enjoyed learning about new cultures, and she even wanted to learn Italian. Trisha was so proud of her grown-up daughter and was very happy for her. That summer, Claire started dating a new guy, and this romance developed very rapidly. For the first time, the girl thought that she might want to see this person as her life partner. The relationship was gaining momentum quickly. The young couple spent a lot of time together, and they were happy. Usually, Claire worked in the morning, but on September 13, 2005, she agreed to swap shifts with one of her roommates. It was the most ordinary Tuesday. Claire was standing at her counter across from her colleague Victoria's counter, who worked with another cosmetic brand. There were already few customers in the department, and the employees just watched as shoppers left the mall with full bags. Around 7:45 p.m., Victoria waved to Claire and pointed to the clock, as if to say that there were only 15 minutes left until closing. At this time, several customers were strolling through the cosmetics department just looking at the displays. Another colleague, Helen, was also getting ready to close the store at this time. Victoria and Claire were just standing and smiling at each other, but literally within seconds, their smiles abruptly disappeared. Before anyone could understand what was happening in the mall, complete chaos broke out. People were running, there were screams and loud noises. Several witnesses called the emergency services and reported that a shooting had occurred in the building. A shooting in the department where Clare Bernal worked was unreal. It all happened very unexpectedly. The police who arrived at the scene were told that 2 people had probably died. The patrol officers relayed the information to the station, and soon employees from the Serious Crimes Department arrived there. They were shocked that someone was able to enter the shopping center with a weapon. The victims were indeed 2 people, a man and a woman. It all happened at the cosmetics counter. The girl was lying face up, with a large red stain spreading around her on the ceramic tiles. It appeared that she had been shot in the head several times. Next to her lay a man with a bloodied face and arms outstretched to the side. There was a gun on the floor beside him, and shell casings were scattered around the body. It turned out that he had committed suicide by shooting himself in the right temple. The mall management explained to the detectives that this was Michael Petch, who had once worked as a security guard on the first floor. If anyone knew how to bring in a weapon, it was him. But why did Michael voluntarily leave this world? Was it a fit of jealousy? Was he mentally ill? How did he get access to a weapon? There were many questions, and the police had to sort it all out. The detectives learned that there had been a previous romantic relationship between the 2 deceased employees. That's when the officers found out that the second victim was Clare Bernal. The girl was not supposed to work that evening. Michael knew her schedule, as it almost never changed, and now the detectives wondered how the security guard found out that the girl would be working the evening shift. Claire's roommates told the officers that Michael was constantly hanging around the cosmetics counter. Claire had met him back in January, and they had only gone on 3 dates. The man seemed too intrusive to the girls. He demanded that Claire spend every day with him and refused to take no for an answer. According to the roommates, it was a very toxic relationship, so Claire didn't drag it out and broke up with the security guard, but he had no intention of leaving her alone. He called, sent text messages, constantly followed her, and acted as if they were still in a relationship. Michael constantly stalked the girl outside their apartment windows, so they decided to move to another area. But the harassment only intensified. He didn't want to leave Claire alone and confessed his love to her at every meeting. Claire no longer knew what to do because they had only gone on 3 dates, and she hadn't given him any reason to behave this way. The roommates explained to the police that Michael had been fired from the mall and was under investigation by the Metropolitan Police. In the summer, he stopped stalking Claire. The girls thought he was in jail and relaxed, but as it turned out, they were wrong. The investigators tracked down Michael's address and headed there. It was an apartment in an old building at the end of a street, a 40-minute drive from Claire's house, in a completely different, much more rundown area. The street was poorly lit, and the building itself was in terrible condition. It was surrounded by grass 3 feet high. All the windows were either boarded up or broken, but the front door was open. It was more like a homeless den than the residence of a decent person. In the house, the detectives found not 1, not 2, but 7 men sleeping wherever they could. None of them were armed. All the inhabitants of the strange dwelling were from Eastern Europe and spoke little English. Only one was able to somehow tell the law enforcement officers about Michael Petch. The man explained that everyone who lived in this house had a visa. They were involved in construction projects and trade. Michael was their 8th roommate, and he had always been different from the majority. While others went out drinking, Petch sat alone in his bedroom, writing something in a notebook. But in general, he was a very sensitive and kind person until the beginning of March, and then he exploded with anger again. Michael had left them at the end of April, and they had no idea where he was at the moment. The inhabitants of the abandoned house were shocked when they learned that Petch had stooped to committing a crime. While some officers were conducting the investigation, others visited Claire's father, Martin. They informed him and the girl's brothers of the tragic news. Martin's heart instantly shattered into 1,000 pieces. He had no idea that his daughter was dating anyone, and now he was angry at Tricia because she hadn't told him anything about Michael Petch. At 2:30 in the morning, the police visited Tricia's house. The woman had returned home around midnight, as she had been at a friend's birthday party. She was already asleep when there was a loud knock on the porch. Her partner Peter went to open the front door. While he was talking to law enforcement, Tricia listened to their every word. When Claire's name was mentioned, she realized that her worst nightmare had come true. The woman rushed downstairs and asked how it had happened. The police replied that the girl had been shot, and Tricia already guessed who had done it. Time seemed to slow down for the mother. An endless number of emotions and questions raced through her head. She couldn't answer any of them. Tricia spent the rest of the night in complete shock. She was too upset to talk to anyone. Grief and guilt overwhelmed the woman's heart. The next morning, on Wednesday, September 14th, detectives questioned the frightened colleagues and employees of the mall about what they had witnessed the previous evening. Everyone wanted to help. Everyone who knew Claire adored her. They couldn't believe that it had actually happened. The girls who worked with Claire told a similar story to the roommates. Claire had only gone on 3 dates with Michael before their relationship hit a dead end. The young couple had argued about something, and it was the man's fault. He came to the department to apologize and tried to win back Claire's affection, but she didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. Nevertheless, Michael was persistent and crossed all boundaries. The girl had to turn to other mall employees for help. Michael was fired and banned from appearing in the store. Now it was time to talk to one of the last people who saw Claire alive. Victoria, who worked at the opposite counter, reported that Michael had shot Claire before she realized that she was in danger. Around 7:45 in the evening, before the end of the shift, the girls were glancing at each other. Suddenly, Victoria noticed a shadow behind Claire. It was a man, and he was sneaking up on her colleague like a spy. The girl thought that it was either a crazy customer trying to steal something or Claire's new boyfriend wanting to surprise her. At that moment, the man emerged from the shadows. In his hand was a black gun aimed at the back of Claire's head. When Victoria realized what was happening, Claire was still smiling, but then there was a loud bang, and she collapsed to the floor. Victoria stood there, unable to move. She was in complete shock. The man approached the fallen Claire and fired several more shots. Victoria saw nothing more because she ran, but she heard 2 more bangs behind her. The rest of the people in the store were also in a complete panic. Helen, the second colleague of the deceased, saw the first shot and immediately dove under the counter and covered her head. One witness thought the store was being robbed. Another thought there was some kind of accident at the mall and just ran out into the street. After the interrogations, it turned out that Michael first shot Claire in the back of the head and then 3 times in a row in the face. The 5th bullet accidentally hit the ceiling when the man tried to commit suicide. and the sixth and final one ended his life forever. The detectives found the hotel where Michael was staying at the time. In the room, they discovered a 40-page notebook where the man made his notes. He wrote in both English and Slovak. On one page, Michael wrote down Claire's new address, so the move didn't save the girls from being stalked. As it turned out, finding out the new address wasn't very difficult. Other pages of the notebook were filled with quotes about the meaning of life, about his love for Claire, and Michael's own poems. He called the girl his one and only love. The entries showed how obsessed Michael was. He and Claire had actually only gone on 3 dates, and after the first one, the man realized that this girl was destined for him by fate, and they simply had to be together. It seemed that Michael lived in some kind of fantastic world of his own. He was absolutely not interested in anything except his feelings for his chosen one. Initially, Claire and Michael lay on adjacent tables in the pathologist's laboratory, and although someone might consider it silly, one of the officers decided that it was unethical to leave the girl next to her stalker and executioner, and took Claire's gurney to another room. Claire's autopsy showed that she had been shot 4 times. The bullet to the back of the head instantly ended her life, so the 3 shots to the face were only meant to deprive her of her beauty. Michael wanted to take away everything that made the girl special. The results of Michael's autopsy showed a high level of a prohibited substance in his blood, a side effect of which is excessive aggression. It is now impossible to know whether Michael had deliberately taken this drug to give himself courage, or whether the crime was an accidental finale to an altered state of consciousness. A few days after the tragedy, the detective spoke with Tricia, the mother of the deceased girl, to find out her version of events. The woman said that after 3 weeks of dating, Michael began to act like he owned Claire. He didn't want Claire to leave the house at all or communicate with anyone, even with her roommates or mother. Michael wanted to spend every spare hour with Claire, making the girl feel uncomfortable. Claire didn't want to hurt him, so she tried to soften the breakup. In fact, she was going to end communication even earlier. But Michael had planned a trip to his home in Slovakia at the end of February, and Claire didn't want to spoil his mood before the vacation. The last straw was when the man asked the girl to meet him at the airport upon his return. Then he began to insist on staying at her apartment and not dragging his heavy suitcase across London. When Claire asked him to leave, he refused. That's when Claire decided to tell him about the breakup, after which Michael sat outside her apartment for 2 hours. But this, according to Tricia, was only the beginning of his relentless stalking. The man began to follow the girl around the cosmetics department, watching her every move, and in the evenings he followed her all the way home or just stood guard at the entrance. He texted her 50 times a day, telling her that he loved her and repeating that they were made for each other. Then the messages became more disturbing. In them, Michael threatened to commit suicide if he couldn't be with Claire. Worse, Michael dragged his colleagues into all this, who would approach the girl during the day and try to persuade her to listen to the man in love. In their eyes, Claire clearly looked like a narcissistic bitch who was playing with the feelings of an adult. She felt the need to smooth over the situation, so she agreed to talk to Michael and explain that they could only be friends. But all this only aggravated the already strained relationship. After his shift, he followed her home with a large bouquet of flowers and persisted until she accepted it. In the end, the flowers lay on the porch of Claire's house for a week as she left them outside, refusing to accept any gifts from this individual. She probably berated herself for ever agreeing to go on a date with this man. Claire still hoped that Michael would grow tired of pursuing her and leave her alone. At the mall, she tried to keep her concerns about this matter private. The young woman didn't want to lose her dream job due to an admirer's intrusive behavior. The stalking began to affect Claire's emotional and physical well-being. She couldn't sleep, stopped eating properly, became anxious, and cried over trivial matters. Work issues arose due to tardiness and scattered attention. Her world was literally shrinking. In March 2005, Claire spotted Michael on the subway platform as she was heading home. She quickly jumped on the train, but the man managed to board the same car. He sat opposite her and stared intently. At the stop, Claire ran again, but he caught up and shoved her. The threat to report him to the police only angered him further. Michael menaced that he would then take Claire's life. That evening, the young woman called her mother and tearfully recounted the threats from her former admirer. Both women were frightened at that moment but didn't believe he could seriously harm her, and they were wrong. Now the mother blamed herself for not intervening, not going to the police, not demanding protection for her daughter from Michael, and not saving her life. The next day, Michael was again standing at the cosmetics department window, tapping on the glass like a guilty puppy, waving his hand and publicly embarrassing Claire. He continued his phone attacks. Claire changed her number, but it didn't help. Michael somehow discovered it and continued calling and sending messages. When she blocked him, he changed his SIM card and started all over again. As soon as Michael's text messages began to include threats towards her, Claire finally mustered the courage to approach the mall's head of security, who took the accusations seriously. Using the store's cameras, he tracked the guard's behavior and transferred him to another floor. However, Michael still came to the beauty department to spy on Claire. Eventually, he was suspended from work entirely, and Claire was persuaded to go to the police, which she did. Michael was arrested, and Claire felt responsible for this. According to her mother, the girl didn't want to cause him trouble. She just wanted him to stop. Michael was released on bail under a non-molestation order aimed in English law at stopping harassment by a former partner. This meant he couldn't contact Claire, but Michael kept reappearing. The girl was terrified of the stalking. Because he wasn't causing physical harm, only emotional abuse, the police deemed him non-threatening. Michael was examined by a doctor who found no mental health issues. Nevertheless, the officers handling his case spoke with the mall's security service and Michael himself. The man, of course, told a completely different story of his relationship with Claire. According to him, he broke up with Claire to test her feelings. After this, the girl allegedly confessed she was in love with him, but his actions had hurt her. Now she was confused and didn't believe anything. When he realized he had made a mistake trying to find out how Claire felt about him, he begged for her forgiveness and tried to win her back. At the police station, this man swore he never wanted to cause pain to his beloved. He was sorry she was so upset because of him. When Michael once again violated the restraining order, he was arrested right outside Claire's new apartment. He raised his handcuffed wrists and smiled broadly. 8 days later, Michael was released on bail. His hearing was scheduled for late August. All this time, Claire dreaded facing Michael in court, feeling like an executioner. But this didn't happen because the lawyer convinced Michael to plead guilty to stalking to potentially receive only a 6-month sentence, likely suspended. Michael was due to appear in court again on September 21, 2005, for sentencing. For several months between the arrest and trial, the persistent admirer didn't show up in Claire's sight, and the girl thought this nightmare had ended. She was relieved that she wouldn't be responsible for sending him to prison for several years, and 6 months in confinement would just show him that he had behaved incorrectly. No one expected Michael to violate his bail conditions. Detectives investigating Clare Bernal's death were able to determine the crime's motive and what preceded it, but they still didn't know how Michael managed to acquire a gun and bring the weapon into the mall. After Michael was fired from Harvey Nichols, arrested twice, and released on bail, the police lost track of him. While on bail, Michael left the country for Slovakia in April 2005. In early May, he enrolled in a month-long target shooting course in his homeland, and on June 8th, he applied for a firearm permit with the Slovak police. This included a background check and a doctor's report. The check didn't reveal any criminal charges since Michael had not yet been convicted. After obtaining a firearms license, Michael officially purchased a compact pistol in July that was easy to conceal. Although he legally owned the weapon in Slovakia, it was prohibited in the UK. On August 11th, Michael boarded a bus back to London and hid the gun behind his back. Customs was supposed to check everyone passing through, but for some reason, Michael was never searched. He managed to smuggle the weapon and lay low until the court hearing on August 31st. All this time, he was planning an attack on Claire. Michael knew the girl's schedule and which side doors were unguarded during the day. And on September 13th, he carried out his sinister plan. Clare Bernal's funeral took place on September 26, 2005. Hundreds of people came to bid farewell to this young woman who died at the hands of a stalker. Her mother, Tricia, shared that her daughter wanted to advance in her profession, and she already had an interview scheduled for a secretary position at a PR company. Clare had begun moving her belongings to her father's house to feel safer and be closer to her new boyfriend, whom she was in love with and actually planned to marry. Her sudden passing devastated friends and relatives because none of them knew about the stalking. Clare disliked burdening others with her problems. The girl's mother, Tricia, somehow found the strength to channel her anger against Michael Petch into a successful campaign to make stalking a criminal offense. Together with families of other victims, she created an organization called Protection Against Stalking and lobbied authorities on this issue. In 2012, a new law prohibiting stalking was passed. Tricia's efforts to improve the effectiveness of the justice system earned her an honorary British Empire Award in 2021. Her work has helped many stalking victims, but unfortunately, it won't bring back the daughter whose voice she had to become to protect others. No one has the right to control another person's life. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.